Hello, I am an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an official representative of anybody or an expert. I just like knives. Um, as we sit at home during the COVID lockdown, you've been joining me on a tour through my collection of small folding pocket knives. And today on that tour, we're going to have a look at this unusual little specimen. This is a Terrain 365 Otter, a slip joint knife with some unusual properties. I have been looking for quite a while for a non-rusting knife. Some of my hobby activities are outdoors. It's not uncommon for me to get wet, and before the lockdown, I even used to spend some time, not a lot, but some time near salt water. And so I've always been interested in the idea of knives that can't rust and been looking for something nice. The Spyderco Salt series is an obvious place to look, and by all accounts they're quite effective, and I might well end up with a native salt. But I don't really like the look of Spyderco's, and I'm not quite ready to go there yet, so I'm always looking around for what else there is. And then I saw this knife reviewed. This knife is not made of steel. Yeah, it's a different alloy involving cobalt and carbide, and so it is completely non-rusting, they say. And it is a gentleman's slip joint, which I also like, so I thought it was worth having a look. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't find a local distributor. I don't live in the United States. I generally try not to order from out of my own country, but I hoped that maybe a slip joint would be able to make it past the borders and get here. Now, just as a little aside, I should say that that's not guaranteed. I had a Monterey Bay Knives EWC seized at the border, which is kind of ironic. Right? The EWC stands for Everywhere Carry, and it's Monterey Bay Knives non-locking slip joint. It's specifically designed to be legal in most places. But it was seized at the border, labeled a prohibited weapon, as far as I can tell, because it opened so easily that they classified it as a gravity knife. In other words, a balisong, which is illegal in my country. So every time I order something that has to cross borders, I know that it's a crapshoot. But in this case, I couldn't find any other way to get one of these, so I decided to take the risk, and it worked. Here it is. So a description. What have we got here? So the company is called Terrain 365. The knife is the Otter. It comes in a couple of scale options. This is the carbon fiber scale option. So what I'll say, Terrain 365 is kind of a one-trick pony company. And I don't mean that to be disparaging, but I mean their thing is they make this cobalt carbide alloy that they call, trademark name of theirs, they call Terravantium. What it is dendritic cobalt. Now, I'm not a metallurgist, so what on earth does that mean? I had to go and look it up. Well, as far as I can figure out, it's an alloy of cobalt and carbide. I'll come back to that a little more in a minute. But basically, there's no iron in it, so it can't rust. So they make that alloy, and then they make a few knives out of it. Now, most of their knives are out of stock most of the time, but this one they had. So this one, the mechanism, this is a traditional slip joint. So pull open, 2 hands, there's a half stop. Push close, 2 hands, there's no locking mechanism. So traditional slip joint. There's a nail nick for opening both sides. And it's running internally, aside from the back spring, it's running on phosphor bronze washers. So it's quite smooth. Size, this is a mid-sized knife, a little larger than some of the mid-sized. 176 millimeters. Puts it at 0.95 pocket calculators, if we don't include this silly wire bail, which we'll come back to and talk about. Comparing it to some other knives, my standard, of course, is usually the mini griptilian, so slightly larger than a mini griptilian. Probably makes more sense to compare a slip joint knife to other slip joints, so let's do that. So there's a typical Swiss Army knife. That's a Pioneer. As you can see, the Otter is quite a bit larger than the Pioneer. Benchmade proper, very nice slip joint. The Otter is noticeably larger than the Benchmade proper. If we look at the Lion Steel Best Man, the Otter is noticeably larger than the Lion Steel Best Man. The only thing I've got that is a slip joint and is larger than the Otter is the Chris Reeve Impinda, which is considered large for a slip joint. So this is a big slip joint. Compare it to some non-slip joints, it turns out to be just about exactly the same size as the small Sabenza. Okay, so mid-sized knife, but big for a slip joint. Now for all of those, again, I'm ignoring this silly wire bail, which we'll come back to. The weight, it's 77 grams, which is light. It's not a huge amount of metal there, and carbon fiber, of course, is very light. So 77 grams, the mini Griptilian is 80, the small Sabenza is 81, so it's lighter than those reference knives. The blade is exactly 3 inches long. And I switched to imperial measure inches there because there are a lot of places where 3 inches matters, so this is right on that boundary. And the blade, while we're talking about it, is I think, a kind of a funny looking stubby blade. They're calling it a spear point. Honestly, I don't really like the shape. I like more of a drop point or a clip point, the traditional shape of knives. But anyway, that's what it is. And the thing about this knife, as I said, is the material. I keep catching myself wanting to say the blade steel, because it's not steel. So it's this trademarked material called Terravantium dendritic cobalt, which is an alloy of cobalt and carbide. And I did some reading on it. Is this a carbide blade with some cobalt in it, or a cobalt blade with some carbide in it? Does that matter? From the description, I think the former. It's described as carbide crystals sort of suspended in a framework of cobalt. Now, I haven't found any non-marketing sort of scientific papers on this alloy. I'm sure they're out there and I just don't know where to look, but I haven't found any. All I found is marketing claims. The marketing claims are that it cuts aggressively, that it retains its edge well, and that, of course, not being iron, it can't rust. So I'm looking forward to trying it out. The body is a typical body on a slip joint. There is a steel back spring. Now the steel back spring and the liners look like the same material to me, just looking at the color of the metal there. The specifications on the website say they're not. They say it's titanium liners, so okay, maybe that's true. And carbon fiber scales. Clip, no, there is no clip. There is no lanyard hole, but there is a lanyard bail here. So I mean, you certainly could put a lanyard on this knife by passing it through the bent titanium wire bail. I usually comment on whether a knife is ambidextrous. So for this one, yes, absolutely, completely ambidextrous. No locking mechanism, so there's nothing to make one side different. And the two-handed opening from a nail nick, there is a nail nick on both sides. So it is a completely ambidextrous knife. Left-handers, be pleased. And it is manufactured in the United States. It says USA on the blade somewhere. There we are. It says USA on the blade. I don't know where in the USA it's made, but the company's headquarters is listed as California, so maybe there. Anyway, US made. So I like some things about this knife. There's a few things I don't. What do I like? Well, this interesting alloy, the Terravantium, is interesting. It's a conversation piece. Tell knife friends that it's not steel. And they go, oh, cool. I like the promise of the alloy. I like the promise that it can't rust. I like the promise that it has long edge retention. And I'm really glad that people are experimenting with non-steel blade materials. This is not just another, an incremental change, a tiny change to the formula of steel. This is an entirely different material, and I'm glad people are doing that. So I like that. I do wish it had a little more scientific sounding or engineering sounding name. As Terravantium sounds kind of like marketing hype. Like I don't know, like if S35VN was called Chris Reevium, right? So I wish it had a little bit more of a technical specification than just the trademark sort of marketing bump, but oh well. It's a decent slip joint mechanism, easy to open and close. The tension is just right. And the half stop is pretty good. Like, this is a very pleasant slip joint to work with. Honestly, there's a much more expensive slip joint, the Impinda. I actually find the Impinda hard to open. That's a chore. Whereas this thing seems to be just right. I like the body appearance. I like the woven carbon fiber. I don't know what the right name for that style of carbon fiber is, but I like that. I like the way it has a kind of a three-dimensional appearance. When the light hits it, it looks like you're looking down through layers. Maybe you are looking down through layers. I'm not really sure. So I like that. And this is a knife. Duh. It's comfortable for cutting with. You get a good 4-finger grip. Lots of room. There's no hot spots. How could there be? There's no mechanisms. It's the carbon fiber scales, unlike some of the other carbon fiber I have, unlike, say, the Benchmade Proper. Benchmade Proper carbon fiber is polished smooth. This isn't. This has a little bit of a texture to it, so there's a little bit of a grip as you're holding onto it, and I like that. And finally, although I haven't tried it, it does look like it can be disassembled. It's removable screws, not rivets. Now, I like that I could disassemble it, but I'll say I will avoid doing that. I generally try not to disassemble my slip joints if I can help it, because I'm scared. There's a powerful spring in there and a sharp blade. What could go wrong when you start taking connectors and things up? So I do maintenance from the outside, and I hope I don't have to disassemble this, or at least not very often. Now, what I don't like, well, there are some things about the appearance that I don't really care for. I already said I don't really like the spear point blade. I think it looks kind of funny, kind of stubby-nosed, not very piercy. Is that a word? Pointy. The ends of the carbon fiber scales, this carbon fiber here, the surface looks really beautiful. The ends don't look so beautiful. They're chamfered, which is nice, but they're chamfered flat, not in a curve. It doesn't match the lines of the body in any way, and it looks rough. Now, it isn't rough, feeling it, but because it's cut across the grains of the fiber, it looks rough. It looks unfinished. And finally, on the appearance, what is with this wire bail thing? Like, duh, that's ugly. My God. I mean, I understand they're trying to be faithful to the design of slip joints, out of the 1960s. And I had a bail like this on my Boy Scout knife, but it's ugly. Not only is it ugly, but it's a mechanical problem. There's actually a written warning in the instructions that come with the knife and on their website too that says, be careful not to close the blade while the bail is in there, because you'll close it on the bail and you'll nick your knife blade. Well, that's a design error. I should not be able to do something in the normal operation of the knife that will damage the knife, and putting warning, do not do that in the instructions is not the answer to a design error. That's really dumb. Now, the bail is removable, and I've thought about removing it, but I haven't tried because I don't really know what will happen. Is the screws that are here necessary part of the, holding the frame together? Will it leave an ugly hole? I might explore removing it someday. I probably won't. I'll just live with it and grumble about it. Next thing I'll say, I've adjusted this now a little bit, but initially, the opening and closing mechanism, although it's pleasantly easy, it wasn't very smooth. And what was happening is there was just enough side-to-side blade play, not when it's locked open, but at other times, like here. Just enough side-to-side blade play that as I closed it, I was pushing it slightly to the side, and what was happening was I was getting rubbing. The shoulders of the blade, here or here, were rubbing against the liner, and I can actually hear that. There you go. Here, let me put this near the microphone. Okay, that sound you're hearing is the shoulder of the blade rubbing against the liner, and I don't think it should do that. Now, I found that by tightening the pivot screw up a little bit, it straightened that out and reduced some of that play, and I think I found a sweet spot now where it doesn't do that most of the time, but it still does it sometimes. If I tighten the pivot screw more, I can't close the knife, so there's a very delicate sweet spot, and I don't think I should have to do that. It needs a little better clearance, or I don't know, a larger friction surface so that there's less side-to-side motion. But that's, you know, I'd like that to be better. You know, this knife that only costs like 10 times as much doesn't do that. You know, duh. What other things not to like? No clip. Yeah, I can live without a clip. But a knife that doesn't have a clip and has exotic scales rattling around in my pocket is going to get chipped. I've always said, I think if a knife doesn't come with a pocket clip, then it should come with a pocket slip. It doesn't. So this is a Chris Reeve slip, and I tend to keep the knife in this while it's in my pocket. It should come with that. Finally, the blade. I like the promise of the material. I like the idea. Non-ferrous blade, can't rust, stays sharp. Really cool. But I wasn't as impressed with the blade out of the box as I would have liked to be. It wasn't quite as sharp as I like. Now, it was a good working sharpness. It was, you know, fine for cutting things. It wasn't mirror sharp. It wasn't even really paper cutting sharp. It cut paper, but it was a little bit coarse. I'll give it paper cutting sharp, but not razor sharp. I stropped it a little bit and it got better. It's not bad. It's an okay working sharpness, but I just would have liked it a little more. What concerns me is there's some verbiage on their webpage. And again, it's marketing bumf, and I wish they would do that. The verbiage on their webpage talks about how Terravantium sharpens to an edge like a microscopic sawtooth because of the carbide crystals. Come on, guys. All sharpened edges are microscopic saw teeth shapes. Of course they are. And the finer the grit, the smaller the saw teeth. So what is this thing you're saying? Are you saying that it can't take on an ultra fine edge, or that it shouldn't because like it somehow detracts from the intent of the alloy? Like, I don't know what's going on there. So anyway, I'm not going to worry about it. Just complain about it. I'm not going to worry about it. I will use it until it needs sharpening, and then I'll try sharpening it with my normal procedures, and we'll see what it's like. Honestly, I have it for the non-rusting feature, not for the sharpness, and I'm sure that it'll do fine. Final thing on the blade: the blade is not perfectly symmetric, and you know, I wish it was better. That when I say that, I mean the size of the bevel on the two sides. This side and this side is not exactly the same. You probably can't tell here in this video. Here in real life, I can see that the reflective bevels are not the same size. And if I put it under a magnifier, it's quite obvious. So it's not quite a centered sharpening bevel. And I wish it was. And when I resharpen it, it will be. So, you know, just small things. So that's my list. Let's go through my internationally unrecognized knife rating system. We'll start with NTGK for non-threatening gentleman's knife. And we'll do non-threatening, then gentleman's knife. So for non-threatening, it's all good. It's two-handed opening, slow opening, only. Get two-handed only. I can't think of any way to open it one-handed. Slow only. And for non-threatening, that's a good thing. There is no way to flick this thing open so that a scared person thinks you've got a switchblade. So that's great. And it's innocent looking. Okay? It's very much not threatening looking. With this stubby nose, it looks kind of goofy, not stabby. And the bail looks like I never lost my Boy Scout knife, right? So it's very much not threatening looking. So I'd give it an A+ for non-threatening. For the gentleman's knife, it'll do a little less. You know, the good news for gentleman's knife is the woven carbon fiber looks very nice, and the exotic materials, the exotic blade metal, the exotic carbon fiber is a conversation piece, and you know, for a gentleman's accessory, that's a good thing. As a gentleman's knife, the bad is the funny-looking blade shape. The bail, it really looks like I dug my 1960 Boy Scout knife out of my sock drawer, and I'm using it. The no clip but no slip thing means it's going to be rattling around in my pocket, and eventually it's going to come out dinged and gouged. The rough-looking ends on the carbon fiber. The fact that the blade isn't mirror sharp, and I'm don't know that it can be made mirror sharp. All of those count against it as a gentleman's knife. So I'm going to give it a B+ as a gentleman's knife. So all told, as an NTGK, I'm going to give it a B+. Next rating is the KN rating, which is what will my knife nerd friends think? Well, there's, again, good and bad. The good is they'll think the exotic metal is really cool. It's a conversation piece. Ooh, carbide, it's carbon, cobalt, it can't rust. Ooh, cool. And of course, carbon fiber is always cool with knife nerds. And the action is nice. They'll like that. Now the cons, well, first of all, some knife nerds just don't like slip joints. They like knives that you can open one-handed, and they would just discount this out of hand. So I'm not counting those people because I think there's a place for slip joints and I like them. They certainly won't like the bail. In fact, I've already had a couple of knife nerds comment on the ugliness and obsolescence of the bail. They certainly won't like that rubbing when it's opening and closing. Now again, that's adjustable out, but shouldn't have to. I think the exotic metal swamps the other considerations. I'll give it a A as a knife nerd rating. I think that they'll ignore all those other faults because of the coolness of the metal. And finally, my cut myself rating. My cut myself rating, I'm going to give it a B+. Now, B usually means I have cut myself, and A means I have not. So what the heck is a B+? And the answer is, well, I have cut myself on this knife, but not on the blade. Or at least not on the live part of the blade. I've cut myself when I had the knife like this, actually, half open. And when the knife is half open, down here, this little heel is very sharp. And I have cut myself on that. So I'm going to call it a B+ for a cut myself rating. So that kind of brings us to the end. This is a mid-sized, slightly on the large end of mid-sized slip joint, whose primary kind of attribute is the interesting blade alloy. I am looking forward to trying it. How well does it cut? It cuts okay, by the way, around the house. How well does it cut? How long does it wear? How well does it wear? And what's it like being completely non-rusting? I'm looking forward to getting it wet and just seeing how it holds up. The actual fit and finish of the knife as a mechanical thing is not quite up to some similar knives. The rough-looking scale edges, the action that is so sensitive to pivot tension. I'll certainly try some of their other models when I can nab one. They're perpetually out of stock, but I'll try one of their others. And if they actually do sell the alloy, as their website suggests they do, I'd love to see another manufacturer, somebody who makes an otherwise excellent high-end slip joint like the Benchmade Proper or the Lion Steel Bestman. I'd love to see them buy a block of this metal and make one of their knives out of this alloy. That would be cool. Anyway, I certainly will be carrying it at times when the non-rusting nature of it is priority number one. When I know I'm going to get wet, when I'm near the ocean. But I am still looking for something that's sort of as rust resistant, but better built and more in line with the looks I like. That's it for this. Thanks for watching. See you again.